I'm Emily Carter, 30 years old, a software engineer living in Seattle. And last month, I did something I've dreamed about since I was a kid, staring out the window of a crumbling apartment. I bought a house. Not just any house, a little 3-bedroom craftsman cottage tucked on a quiet, tree-lined street just a few miles from downtown. White trim, navy blue siding, a small garden out front I've already planted with lavender and rosemary. When I turned the key in the door for the first time, the weight of a decade lifted off my shoulders. This wasn't just real estate. This was proof that I had clawed my way out of everything that tried to break me. Every late-night debugging code until sunrise, every weekend I skipped outings to save money, every anxious budgeting spreadsheet, it all led here. Standing in the empty living room that first night, I pressed my palm against the smooth, cool wall and whispered to myself, I did it. The hardwood floors creaked under my feet. The smell of fresh paint filled the air. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was truly home. This house represented more than stability. It was independence. It was security. It was the physical embodiment of every no I'd heard growing up and every yes I'd fought to give myself. I walked through each room slowly, imagining a future, here dinner parties with friends, lazy Sunday mornings with coffee and a book by the window, maybe even a family of my own one day. It was mine. All mine. And nothing could ruin that feeling. At least, that's what I thought. I didn't know that just weeks later, the very people who once told me I'd never make it would show up at my front door, bags in hand, ready to take pieces of what I'd built. I didn't know this house, my symbol of freedom, would become a battleground over control, boundaries, and blood ties. But that storm was still on the horizon. In that moment, standing barefoot in my new kitchen with takeout on the counter and a glass of cheap champagne in my hand, all I could feel was joy. Pure, hard-earned, defiant joy. Growing up, family was never just family. It was obligation. It was sacrifice. It was a constant tug of war between what was mine and what my mother decided belonged to everyone. My mom, Laura Carter, was the kind of woman who believed sharing wasn't a choice, it was a duty, one that always seemed to fall hardest on me. From as early as I can remember, she controlled every decision I made. If I got a part-time job, she'd borrow half my paycheck to help a cousin with expenses. If I saved up for a school trip, she'd guilt me into giving the money to Aunt Denise because family comes first. It wasn't just about money either. It was my time, my space, my peace. Every holiday, our tiny apartment would overflow with relatives who stayed weeks instead of days, eating our food, sleeping in my bed, leaving behind messes I was expected to clean. Mom called it generosity. I called it exhaustion. I remember one summer when I was 13, my cousins, Max and Lila, came to visit for 2 weeks. They ended up staying for 4 months. They ate through our pantry, hogged the TV, and treated my room like a free Airbnb. When I complained, Mom snapped, "They're family, Emily. We share what we have." It was always the same refrain, one that silenced me over and over again. As I got older, the guilt got heavier. I paid for birthday gifts I couldn't afford. I skipped outings with friends to babysit cousins who weren't my responsibility. And every time I tried to push back, Mom reminded me of everything she'd sacrificed to raise me alone. It worked until it didn't. Somewhere along the way, resentment replaced compliance. I started to dream of a life where I didn't owe anyone anything, a place where the only expectations were the ones I set for myself. That dream took root quietly, like a seed buried deep, and it grew stronger with every guilt trip and every intrusion. I swore that when I finally had my own space, it would be just that. Mine. No uninvited guests, no obligations, no family means share. My home would be my sanctuary. I believed that promise would protect me. I didn't realize it would soon be put to the test. The first weekend after I moved in, I decided to celebrate. Nothing fancy, just a small housewarming with the handful of people who'd seen me through late nights, job rejections, and years of ramen-fueled rent payments. My best friend Mia brought wine. David from work showed up with a ridiculous welcome to adulthood doormat. We laughed, grilled in the backyard, and took 1,000 photos clinking glasses in the kitchen, posing by the front door, even a cheesy group selfie on the porch swing I'd installed myself. It was the first time in a long time that I felt truly proud. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I posted a few of the pictures online later that night, nothing dramatic, just a caption that read, "Home, finally dar." Within minutes, comments and likes flooded in. Friends congratulated me, old classmates messaged me about catching up. It felt good. Maybe too good. Because 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in months. Emily? My mom's voice, smooth and sweet like it always was before a storm. I saw your little party online. So, you bought a house? I hesitated, unsure how to answer. She continued before I could. We need to talk. The way she said it made my stomach tighten. There was no congratulations, no I'm proud of you. Just that clipped, loaded sentence. I asked what she wanted to talk about, but she brushed me off. I'll explain soon, she said. Just make sure you're home this weekend. And then she hung up. For the rest of the week, I couldn't shake the unease. Every time I looked around my cozy living room, the warmth I'd felt started to fade. Memories of childhood of my space never truly being mine crept back in. I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe she just wanted to see the place, to reconnect. But deep down, I knew my mother. And when she said, "We need to talk," it was never just talk. It was always about control, and I was about to find out just how much control she still thought she had over me. It was a Saturday morning like any other. I'd just poured my first cup of coffee and was halfway through a playlist of lo-fi beats when a sharp knock echoed through the house. My heart skipped. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, the mug nearly slipped from my hand. There she was, my mother, Laura, smiling like she owned the place. And beside her, dragging 2 overstuffed suitcases each, were my cousins Max and Lila. "Surprise," Mom said, sweeping past me into the foyer before I could say a word. "Oh, Emily, this place is even lovelier than I imagined. I'm so proud of you." My cousins followed without hesitation, kicking off their shoes and plopping their luggage in the hallway. "Nice place," Max muttered, glancing around like he was assessing real estate. Lila was already scrolling through her phone, snapping photos of the living room. I blinked, still trying to process what I was seeing. "What? What's going on?" I finally managed. Mom turned, her smile warm but practiced. "We're moving in for a while," she said, as if she were announcing the weather. "Max needs a fresh start, and Lila's lease just ended. They'll stay here until they get settled." My jaw dropped. "Moving in?" I echoed. You didn't ask me." "Oh, honey, you've got so much space," Mom interrupted, waving a hand dismissively. 3 bedrooms. It's silly for them to struggle with rent when family can help. And besides," she added with a pointed look, "family shares everything." My throat went dry. The words hit like a punch, the same old refrain I'd heard my entire life. I wanted to scream, to tell her this wasn't her decision to make, but I was too stunned, too blindsided by the audacity of it all. Max and Lila were already talking about where their things would go, which rooms they liked best. My mother wandered into the kitchen, commenting on how homey it felt, as if she lived there too. My house, my sanctuary, suddenly didn't feel like mine at all. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. I stood there in my own living room, still trying to wrap my head around the fact that my mother and 2 cousins had just waltzed in without so much as a phone call. Mom poured herself a cup of coffee from my machine like she lived there, then motioned for me to sit. "Emily, sweetheart," she began, adopting that soft, rehearsed tone she always used right before a guilt trip. "Max has been out of work for months. The company downsized, and he's barely scraping by. And poor Lila, rent in this city is outrageous. She's drowning just trying to keep a roof over her head. They need a break." Max chimed in from the couch, half laughing. "Yeah, I'm living off unemployment. It's brutal." Lila sighed dramatically, scrolling through apartments on her phone. "There's literally nothing under $2,000. It's impossible." Mom clasped her hands like she was making a heartfelt plea. "You have this beautiful house, Em. 3 bedrooms, a big backyard. You've got space. They just need somewhere to land for a bit until things stabilize." My chest tightened. I knew this routine by heart. I'd lived it my whole life. "Mom, I understand," I said carefully, "but I didn't buy this house to run a boarding house. I need space, boundaries." Her smile faltered and the sweetness in her voice sharpened just a little. "Boundaries? Emily, don't be ridiculous. This is what family does. We lift each other up, and after everything I've done for you..." There it was, the dagger wrapped in silk. "I raised you on my own," she continued. I sacrificed everything so you could go to college, so you could have this life. All I'm asking is a little kindness in return." I clenched my jaw. That wasn't the whole truth. Yes, she had raised me, but she'd also taken and demanded and guilted me into giving more than I ever should have. Still, the words hit their mark. My protests felt selfish, like I was betraying some unspoken code. "It's just until they get back on their feet," she added. "You'll barely notice they're here." But I already noticed. The air in my home felt heavier, ownership slipping through my fingers. And something deep inside told me that a little while was going to stretch far longer than anyone was admitting. By the next morning, my cousins were acting like they'd been there for months. I woke up to the sound of thuds and laughter coming from down the hall. When I opened my bedroom door, Max was dragging a mattress into the my guest room, while Lila unpacked boxes of clothes and makeup onto the dresser. I'd carefully refinished myself. "We figured we'd get a head start," Max said casually, like this was the most normal thing in the world. Didn't want to wait around. I stared, speechless. "I never said you could move in." I finally blurted out. Lila looked up, confused. "Didn't Mom talk to you?" She said it was fine. That was the thing, my mom always said it was fine. Fine to borrow my money, fine to invite herself into my plans, fine to decide what I owed. And now, apparently, fine to let two grown adults take over my house. By the afternoon, Max had claimed the larger of the two spare rooms, muttering something about needing space to set up his job search. Lila moved into the other, immediately tacking up posters and string lights like a teenager redecorating a dorm. My once minimalist guest spaces now looked like chaotic storage units. They rearranged furniture without asking, dragged boxes into the hallway, and stacked their shoes by the front door like it was their home. They didn't even wait for me to offer them keys. Mom handed them spares from the hook where I kept my extras. "You won't even notice we're here," she'd said, but I noticed everything. The sink full of dirty dishes that weren't mine, the TV blaring shows I didn't watch, the laundry basket in the hallway overflowing with clothes I didn't wear. Every corner of the house that had once felt peaceful now hummed with someone else's noise. My sanctuary, the place I'd worked my entire adult life to build, suddenly felt like a shared space I hadn't agreed to share. And as I stood in the doorway of the guest room, staring at Max's gaming setup and Lila's makeup spread across my dresser, a cold realization crept in. They weren't planning on leaving anytime soon. The first week, I told myself it was temporary. The second week, I told myself it was manageable. By the third, I stopped lying. My house no longer felt like mine. Max and Lila had settled into a rhythm that involved me footing the bill for their lives. They didn't offer a dime for rent or utilities. My grocery bill nearly doubled, and every time I opened the fridge, it was stripped bare. Lila had a talent for finishing expensive things: artisan coffee beans, imported cheese, the skincare products I kept in the bathroom, and acting like they'd never existed. Max, meanwhile, treated my living room like his personal office. He sprawled across the couch with job listings open on his laptop but never seemed to apply for anything. Instead, he spent hours gaming, ordering food deliveries on my Wi-Fi, and loudly complaining about how hard the job market was. Then came the friends. Every weekend, new faces drifted through my front door. Max's buddies camped out until 3 a.m., laughing loudly while I tried to sleep. Lila's girlfriends used my shower after their nights out, leaving a trail of hair products and wet towels behind. They even started making suggestions about the house. "You should knock down this wall," Max said one morning, munching on cereal he hadn't bought. "Open concept is way more modern." Lila chimed in while painting her nails at my dining table. "The kitchen would look better with a marble island. Honestly, if you'd just let us help you redesign, this place could be so much more." I stared at her in disbelief. They were talking about changing my home as if it belonged to them. I tried bringing it up with Mom, hoping she'd understand how far things had gone. "They're taking advantage of me," I said, exhaustion bleeding into my voice. "They're not contributing. They're not even respectful." But instead of support, I got a lecture. "Stop being selfish," she snapped. "They're family, Emily. They're going through a tough time. You're doing well, you can afford to help." That sentence, "you can afford to help," stuck to my ribs like poison. It wasn't about what I could afford, it was about what I was willing to sacrifice. And I was starting to realize the cost was more than financial. It was my peace, my boundaries, and the very sense of safety I'd worked my whole life to build. I didn't know how bad it had gotten until I found the listing. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was scrolling through local short-term rental sites while planning a work trip. That's when I saw a familiar photo, my spare bedroom, perfectly staged, captioned, "Charming private room near downtown." My stomach dropped. The listing belonged to Max. He had photographed the room, uploaded it under his account, and was charging strangers to stay in my house without my permission. I confronted him immediately. "Are you out of your mind?" I shouted, holding my phone up to his face. He barely looked embarrassed. "Relax," he said. "I was just trying to make a little extra cash. We could split it. As if this was some business venture we'd agreed on." "Take it down now," I snapped. He shrugged, muttering something about me not appreciating initiative. My anger was still simmering when the next blow hit. That night, I went to grab something from my driveway and noticed my car wasn't there. Panic surged through me. An hour later, Lila pulled up, music blasting, wearing sunglasses like she was starring in a music video. "I just borrowed it to run errands," she said casually. But the front bumper told another story, a deep, jagged dent I knew wasn't there before. "Are you serious?" I yelled. She rolled her eyes. "It's just a car, Em. You can afford to fix it." That phrase again, as if my hard work meant I owed them unlimited access. I was shaking with fury, but the worst was still waiting for me inside. Later that night, while searching for a document for work, I noticed my desk drawers slightly ajar. My heart sank. My tax returns, bank statements, and salary slips had been rifled through. Then I overheard them, Max bragging on a phone call about how much I earned, laughing about how loaded I was. "She's sitting on a gold mine," he said. "We're set." Something inside me snapped. All the resentment, all the guilt, all the silent anger I'd swallowed for weeks crystallized into a single, blinding truth. They didn't respect me. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource, a wallet, a free ride. That night, I stared at the walls of the house I had built from nothing, and for the first time, I wondered if I'd already lost it. Something had to change. And soon, I spent that night pacing the length of my living room, my chest tight and my hands trembling. I couldn't unsee the Airbnb listing. I couldn't forget the dent in my car or the sound of Max laughing about my salary like it was his personal jackpot. All of it had pushed me past my breaking point. The next morning, I woke up with a strange, heavy calm. I was done being walked over, done being used. I made coffee, took a deep breath, and called everyone into the living room. "We need to talk," I said. Mom appeared first, her expression already wary. Max followed, still in his pajamas, scrolling through his phone. Lila sauntered in last, looking annoyed that I'd interrupted her morning. I didn't mince words. "This arrangement is over," I said. "You need to leave. All of you." For a second, silence hung in the air and then Mom exploded. "Excuse me?" she snapped, her voice dripping with disbelief. "You wouldn't even have this house without me. I raised you alone, I sacrificed everything, and this is how you repay me? By kicking your family out?" I swallowed the familiar guilt rising in my throat, but I didn't back down. "This is my home, Mom, mine, and I never agreed to share it with anyone." Max threw his phone down and stood up, his face twisted with anger. "Wow. So that's it? We're just trash to you now? You're too good for your own family?" Lila crossed her arms. "You've changed, Emily. All this money, this house, it's gone to your head. You think you're better than us." Their words were designed to sting, and once they would have. Once I would have caved, apologized, and begged them to understand. But now, they just fueled the fire. "This isn't about being better," I said evenly. "It's about respect, and none of you have shown me any," Mom scoffed, shaking her head. "You owe us a place to stay. That's what family does." I looked her dead in the eye. "Family doesn't list my bedroom on Airbnb. Family doesn't take my car without asking. And family doesn't go through my private documents." The room went quiet. Max muttered something under his breath. Lila rolled her eyes. Mom's jaw tightened, but I didn't care. I'd made my choice. "You have 2 weeks to move out," I said, my voice steady. "After that, I'll take legal action if I have to." Their faces shifted shock, rage, disbelief, but I held my ground. I wasn't their bank, their landlord, or their safety net. And I was done pretending I was. In the days that followed, the tension in the house was unbearable. Max barely spoke to me. Lila slammed doors and blasted music whenever she was home. Mom alternated between silent treatment and icy remarks about selfish daughters. I tried to tune it out, but inside, doubt gnawed at me. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe they really were struggling. Maybe I was overreacting. Then a conversation with my Aunt Linda, my mom's older sister, erased any trace of guilt. I called her on a Thursday evening, needing someone objective to talk to. Linda had always been the only person in the family who saw through my mother's manipulations. She listened quietly as I poured everything out: the freeloading, the Airbnb listing, the invasion of my privacy. When I was done, she sighed. "Emily, I think you should know something." Her tone made my stomach knot. "This wasn't spontaneous," she said. "Your mother's been talking about this for months. She told the whole family you were buying a house and that there'd be plenty of room for Max and Lila. They knew before you even closed the deal." My jaw dropped. "What?" "Oh, it gets worse," Linda continued. "She's been telling people you bought a family house, that the plan was always for everyone to live there together. She even said she was thinking about selling her place and moving in eventually." I sank onto the couch, my heart racing. So this wasn't just entitlement, it was a scheme. They'd plotted this before the ink was dry on my mortgage. Every dismissive comment, every guilt trip, every boundary crossed, it was all part of a plan to claim my home as theirs. "I thought you deserved to know," Linda said softly. "I've tried talking to her, but she doesn't see a problem. In her mind, this is how family works." I thanked her and hung up, sitting in stunned silence. The betrayal hit deeper than I expected. It wasn't just that they'd used me, it was that they'd planned to. My home, the one thing I'd built on my own terms, had been treated like a communal prize from the start. But now that I knew the truth, the anger that had been simmering inside me hardened into resolve. This wasn't just about getting them out of my house anymore. It was about reclaiming control of my life, and this time, I wasn't backing down. I didn't sleep much after that conversation with Aunt Linda. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured my mother telling people my home was the family house, like it was a shared inheritance instead of something I had bled and hustled for. The betrayal clung to me like smoke, but beneath the anger was a new, sharper thought. Maybe it was time to stop reacting and start acting. The next morning, I took the day off work and scheduled a consultation with a property lawyer recommended by a colleague. His name was Aaron Miles, mid-40s, composed and confident in the way that instantly made me feel like I wasn't overreacting. After I explained everything: the unauthorized move-in, the Airbnb listing, the damage to my car, the invasion of my personal documents, he nodded thoughtfully. "You have every right to remove them," he said plainly. "They are guests. They have no lease, no rental agreement, and no legal claim to your property. If they refuse to leave after proper notice, you can pursue a legal eviction." I blinked. "So, I'm not trapped?" "Not at all," Aaron said, "but it's important you do this the right way. Start by giving them written notice, a clear deadline to vacate. 14 days is standard. If they're still there after that, we file for eviction in court. It's a straightforward process, though emotionally it can be tough." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. What if they keep showing up after they leave? What if they try to force their way back in? Aaron's expression softened, but his voice remained steady. "Then you file a no trespass order. It legally bars them from entering your property without permission. If they ignore it, the police can intervene." Hearing those words, "police can intervene," shifted something inside me. For so long, I'd felt powerless, like their presence was something I had to tolerate because of blood ties and guilt. But now, for the first time, I saw the situation clearly. I wasn't powerless. I was a homeowner, I had rights, and I didn't owe anyone access to my life just because we shared DNA. By the time I left Aaron's office, I had a folder of paperwork in one hand and something even more valuable in the other. Courage. Courage to protect what I had built. Courage to draw a line. Courage to stop letting guilt make decisions for me. They had turned my dream into a nightmare, but I was about to wake up and take it back. The next evening, I printed 3 identical documents and placed them on the kitchen table. Each one was carefully worded and legally sound, thanks to Aaron's help. At the top, bold and impossible to ignore: notice to vacate, 14 days. My heart pounded as I called them into the room. Mom walked in first, arms crossed. Max followed, looking irritated, and Lila strolled in with her usual air of entitlement. "What's this?" Mom asked, picking up the paper and scanning it. It's a notice, I said, keeping my voice steady. You all have 14 days to move out of my house. After that, I'll proceed with legal eviction. Silence fell for a second, then Mom laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was sharp, mocking, the kind that used to make me feel small as a kid. You wouldn't dare, she said, tossing the paper back onto the table. You don't have the guts. Max leaned back in his chair, smirking. Good one, Em. Real dramatic. Leela actually clapped. Oh, is this supposed to scare us? My pulse roared in my ears, but I didn't flinch. This isn't a game, I said firmly. This is a legal document. If you're not gone in 14 days, I will file for eviction. And if you try to come back after that, I'll file a no trespass order. That means the police will get involved. Mom's smile faltered for the first time. You'd call the police on your own family? If I have to, I replied, because family doesn't abuse me, family doesn't take advantage of me. And family certainly doesn't try to claim something I worked for. Max muttered under his breath about me being a sellout. Lila accused me of throwing blood under the bus. Mom shook her head in disbelief, as if I were the one betraying them, but for once, their guilt trips bounced off. I felt steady, grounded like the foundation of the house beneath my feet. I'm serious, I said, meeting each of their eyes. 14 days. After that, the law takes over. Then I turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving them stunned behind me. For the first time since they'd invaded my home, I felt something powerful stirring inside me. Control. They'd built a story where I was the villain for wanting peace. But the truth was simple. I wasn't being cruel, I was choosing myself. And this time, I wasn't backing down. If I thought handing them the notice would be the end of it, I was painfully wrong. Within 24 hours, the backlash began not just from Mom, Max, and Lila, but from the entire extended family. My phone buzzed nonstop with messages from numbers I didn't even recognize. A cousin from New Jersey I hadn't spoken to in years texted me a long paragraph about how I was abandoning my blood. An aunt left a voicemail sobbing that I was kicking family out onto the streets, and then came the social media posts, vague at first, then direct and vicious. Some people forget where they came from. One read, "Clearly about me." Another called me heartless, accusing me of turning my back on family in their time of need. Mom even posted a photo of Max and Lila sitting on the couch, their luggage stacked beside them, captioned, "Sometimes the people you sacrifice everything for forget you exist." The comments were brutal. Distant relatives, family, friends, even people I barely knew chimed in about how cruel I was, and how cold. A few tagged me directly, demanding I explain myself. It was humiliating and infuriating all at once. For the first time since this started, doubt crept in. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I was heartless. Maybe I should give them more time. The guilt hit in waves, threatening to erode the resolve I'd fought so hard to build. But then I'd walk into my kitchen and see the half-empty fridge they never restocked. I'd look at the dent in my car. I'd open my bank app and see the damage their freeloading had done. And the anger would return, steady and righteous. They weren't homeless. They had options, other relatives, jobs they could pursue, apartments they could rent. But why would they try when taking from me was easier? I reminded myself of the truth. I hadn't thrown them out. I'd asked for respect. They refused to give it. And now they were trying to shame me into surrendering. But I wouldn't. I had worked too hard to build a life on my terms. Their words could sting, but they couldn't change the fact that I had the right to protect my home, my peace, and my boundaries, and that's exactly what I intended to do. 14 days passed. They didn't pack, they didn't leave, they barely even spoke to me, as if ignoring the notice would make it disappear. But on the 15th day, I did exactly what I promised. I filed for eviction. The legal process moved faster than I expected. A court date was set, papers were served. And when they realized I wasn't bluffing, their arrogance began to crack. Max stormed into the kitchen one night, slamming a door behind him. "You're really doing this?" he shouted. "You're going to ruin your own family over a house?" "This isn't about a house," I said quietly. "It's about respect." Lila scoffed, muttering something under her breath, but she started packing that night. Even Mom's tone shifted, the righteous fury replaced with something softer, more desperate. "Emily," she said one evening, tears glistening in her eyes, Please, don't do this. They don't have anywhere else to go. We're family. We belong here. It was the final card, the emotional plea, and once it would have worked, but not this time. You chose not to go anywhere else, I said. You've had weeks to make other arrangements. This isn't my responsibility anymore. The day the sheriff arrived was surreal. A deputy knocked politely, paperwork in hand, and explained the process. Within hours, Max and Lila were gone, their belongings piled into the back of an old sedan. Mom stood on the sidewalk, eyes red, trembling with fury and disbelief. You'll regret this, she hissed. You'll regret pushing us away. I met her gaze steadily. Maybe, but I'll never regret protecting myself. She stared at me for a long moment before turning and walking away, and just like that, the house was quiet, no loud video games, no slammed doors. No strangers wandering in and out, just silence, deep, unfamiliar, healing silence. In the weeks that followed, the family's distance grew. Invitations stopped coming. Calls went unanswered. At first, it hurt. I'd always dreamed of family meaning support, connection, love. But that's not what this family had given me. They'd given me manipulation and guilt, expectation and exploitation. And if losing that meant gaining peace, it was a trade I was finally ready to make. Some nights I still stood by the window, staring out at the street where they'd stood on eviction day. But the sadness was always outweighed by something else, a sense of freedom I'd never known before. My house was mine again. My life was mine again, and I wasn't giving either up ever again. The morning after they left, I woke up to a silence so profound it felt like the house itself was exhaling. For weeks, I had dreaded getting out of bed, knowing I'd step into chaos. I hadn't agreed to dirty dishes in the sink, strangers on my couch, voices echoing through the halls. But that morning, there was none of that, just peace. Sunlight streamed through the windows, painting golden lines across the floorboards. My house was mine again. And I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next weekend, I rolled up my sleeves and started reclaiming every inch of space they had taken over. I patched the dents in the drywall where Max had punched the wall during a video game rage. I scrubbed the wine stains Lila had left on the carpet. I hauled their abandoned junk clothes, trinkets, broken gadgets into garbage bags and dropped them off at a donation center. Then I repainted every room they had touched. It wasn't just about fresh paint. It was symbolic covering over the chaos they'd brought with something new, something that belonged to me. In the guest rooms, I chose soft sage green and warm ivory, colors that felt calm and grounded. I replaced the curtains they'd torn down with linen ones I'd picked out myself. I even built a small reading nook in the corner of one room, something I dreamed of doing before they moved in. Each brushstroke, each piece of furniture I repositioned, felt like a quiet act of defiance and healing. By the time I was done, the house looked different, but more importantly, I felt different. Stronger, wiser, unapologetic. Sitting in my freshly painted living room one evening, I let my thoughts wander over everything that had happened. For so long, I believed family meant unconditional access, that no matter how much it hurt, I had to give and give and give. But I'd learned something the hard way. Family doesn't mean unlimited access. Love doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're self-respect. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself, even when the people you love don't understand. I don't know if my mom will ever speak to me again. Maybe one day she'll see what she did. Maybe she won't. But either way, I'm at peace with it. Because I know I did what was necessary to protect the life I built, and that's what I want anyone listening to remember. Protect what you build. Protect your peace, your space, your boundaries, even from the people you love. Because at the end of the day, your life belongs to you, and you deserve to live it on your terms. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.